Let me close with one last aphorism from a less famous politician than Ben Franklin and Franklin Roosevelt. One who is just as heroic, though. Congressman John Lewis said recently on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, "The time is always right to do what is right." Now, John Lewis is a personal hero of mine from my days growing up in Georgia. He is an African-American from the South, and I believe he is the only African-American leader from the South who has been relentlessly working for LGBT rights, as relentlessly as he worked for African-American civil rights with Dr. Martin Luther King. He and I have been friends since the days when he served on the Atlanta City Council back in the 80s. And he came a couple of years ago to the Cathedral of Hope in Dallas to receive our Hero of Hope Award. And before the services, we sat and talked about why it was that LGBT people's campaign for marriage equality has not progressed more than it has. And he said, and I agree, that we have asked for the right to marry. And that has made it sound like we are asking for something from the church, a right that is controlled by the church. But that's wrong. You see, you can come to Texas, to the Cathedral of Hope, and I will perform a marriage ceremony for you any day. We do them every week. We do them all the time. You can get married at my church and at other thousands of other churches around the country like ours. You can get married if you can just find someone who will put up with you. That part of it I can't do anything about. But you find somebody who will put up with you, you bring them to Texas, and I'll marry them. All right? The Republicans in Texas and the Republicans in Washington can't stop you. You can get married any day you want. But the one thing I can't do for you is give you the 1,130 civil rights that would be given to you if you were a heterosexual couple and came to our church and said the same vows, exchanged the same rings, and prayed the same prayers. You see, we've been asking for the right to get married, and that right has been ours all along. We don't need them to give us permission to get married. You do that, some of you have done that, you could do that any day you wanted to. And see, by letting them frame the argument, sacrament trumps civil rights every time. And so what we've got to say is, I don't need your permission to have a religious ceremony. I can do that or not do that anytime. All I need is for you to treat me like every other law-abiding taxpayer is treated. Now, either give me and my partner the same civil rights as you give heterosexual people, or give me a tax cut. I don't really care which. Either stop taxing gay and lesbian people as much as you tax heterosexual people, or give them all the same civil rights. That's all we're asking for. We can take care of the religious ceremonies ourselves. Amen. Well, there is a huge difference, and we've let them frame the argument, and we'll never win it until we frame the argument, until we say what it is that we want. And what we don't want is not, we don't want their blessing, their approval, their okay on our relationship. Thank you very much. We are adults. We can live without it. We have for all these years. What we do want is the civil rights we pay our taxes for, and it's time we demand them. You that every co-worker you have, if you simply say to them, you can't stop me from getting married. I heard a preacher Saturday night who'd marry me. What you do is simply discriminate against me. And you know, that's special rights for heterosexuals. And the minute you frame it that way, suddenly we begin to win the argument. Well, Congressman John Lewis said to our congregation when he was there to receive the award, when I was a kid, we would have company, and my mother would always say, "Now, John, don't get in the way." And I'd try to be a good boy, and would do what my mama says. But as I got older, I saw how folks like me had to sit in the back of the bus, or go around the back of restaurants to get food, or go to schools without books or air conditioning or supplies. And I have to admit, I decided to disobey my mama. I decided to get in the way of that kind of America. You know, on March the 7th, 1965, in Selma, Alabama, 600 protesters tried to enter that small southern town. And there on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the state troopers and police met them with billy clubs and horses and beat them to the ground. One young man, who was 19 years old that very day, was left in a coma. His friends say he was one of the most articulate spokespeople of the civil rights movement, but to this day he struggles to speak and has an impediment. My friend John Lewis was 19 years old that day. He was the one beaten and left for dead, but he got up. And for 42 years, he has continued to get in the way of injustice and discrimination. And last week, on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, when they came to vote for the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, my friend John Lewis was the only voice to speak in favor of it in a Southern accent. He said, "Madam Speaker, I for one fought too long and too hard to end discrimination based on race and color, not to stand up for discrimination against our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. During the 1960s, we broke down those signs that said white and colored. Call it what you may, to discriminate against someone because they are gay is wrong. It is wrong. It is not right. There's not any room in our society for discrimination. Today we must take this important step after more than 30 long years and pass the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. It is the right thing to do. It is the moral thing to do. Let us do it. Not just for this generation, but for generations yet unborn. Today we have an opportunity to bring down more signs. Now is the time to do what is right, what is fair, what is just. The time is always right to do the right thing. Let us pass this bill. And they did. Last month I took my parents to Washington and we went to John Lewis's office. I wanted them to see what a real American hero looked like. There in his office, the walls were lined with plaques and certificates, including the one from the largest gay and lesbian church in the world. When I saw John, who I've known for 30 years, I thought, wow, I guess we're both getting old. And I was struck by the fact that the youngest man working with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King all those years ago wasn't always going to be with us. Oh, there's still lots of fight left in him. But I couldn't help but wonder, when John is gone, who will get in the way of injustice? Will it be you? I hope so.